This is a Delphi philosophy video, the story of how Delphi, a young girl from ancient Athens, became a philosopher. And you can become a philosopher too. All you have to do is listen to the story, and when we get to a big question, try and think of a great answer. You can maybe pause the video and tell someone what you think, or tell them why, or ask them what they think. As long as you're using your brain and having fun, you can't do it wrong. So, let's get started. It's not fair. Delphi shouted that, not for the first time in her life, at a group of boys. They were seated outside the altar of 12 gods, receiving a lesson from a young teacher. At least they were, before Delphi interrupted them. "Why can't I join in?" Delphi demanded. The boys all looked at each other, anything to avoid looking at her. "Well, because you're, Don't even say it," Delphi spat back. "Because I'm a girl? That's just stupid. I've got a really important thing to talk to you about. You see, Please," cut in the teacher. "This isn't woman's work. We are discussing complex philosophical ideas here, justice and truth, subjects which we know a lot about. I'm sorry, but you just wouldn't understand." "Oh, really?" Delphi shouted. "I know more than you think. I bet you've never spoken to—" She paused, about to say God, but she thought better of it. They were never going to listen to her, and she knew it. "A what? A little dolly?" one of the boys suggested, laughing, but Delphi had already started stomping away, fuming. Why was it every time she tried to talk to boys, she ended up feeling small and stupid and like a child? Why did everyone have to treat her like a child? It wasn't her fault she happened to be one. If only people would just listen to her properly. Time was running out. The ship from Delos would probably arrive tomorrow, and Socrates could be killed the day after that. She had to find the right person to speak to, persuade them to let her go. But even if she did find the right people, they would never listen to her. It wasn't fair. She stomped back to the chaos of the agora. Jars of figs, cherries, prunes, olives, apples, and endless other fruits and grains stretched as far as Delphi could see, which wasn't particularly far because of all the people in the way. Delphi was so busy concentrating on looking properly angry that she didn't quite bother noticing where she was going, and it took her a second to realise she had stomped on somebody's foot. "Ow! Oh, it's you." Delphi looked up and saw the wide, friendly face of Plato. "Oh, hi," mumbled Delphi. "What's wrong?" he said, noticing a sour expression. Delphi was practically screaming it at him. "Nothing," said Delphi. "Yes, there is. I know that look," Plato said, as he sat down in a shady patch against a wall. It was a hot day, and Delphi moodily slumped down next to him. She didn't quite want to let go of her bad mood just yet. "You wouldn't understand," she said, at the air in his general direction. I might do," replied Plato nervously. "It's not fair," Delphi snapped. "No one listens to you if you're a girl in this city. I might have the most brilliant ideas ever, and no one would even stop to listen to them." Plato shrugged. "You say it's not fair about everything." Delphi gave him one of her stares, one of the really pants-wettingly scary ones. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do. You said it yesterday when you weren't allowed to watch the running races." He put on his best squeaky-voiced impression of Delphi. "It's not fair." Delphi hit him. "It's just," Delphi started to say, as Plato sulkily rubbed some life back into his arm. "It's just not, is it? What does fair even mean, anyway? The whole stupid city isn't fair. Girls don't get to go to school. Women and children don't get to come to the market until after the boys do. Men get to go to work and be soldiers and be in charge and everything, and the girls just have to stay at home and—" She tried to remember what she was supposed to be doing. "Clean and sweep the floor and stuff." Delphi rested her chin on her fist. When she thought about it, the city of Athens probably thought it was a very fair city. Athens was the only city where the people really were in charge. They had no kings or crazed lords ruling over them, not anymore anyway. It was called democracy, and it meant that every person in the city could vote on all the important decisions. Unless you were a slave, obviously. Or a foreigner. Or a woman. Or a child. Or too poor or too stupid to do it properly. Which didn't seem quite fair. "Is there anything else that's unfair that you want to add to your list?" Plato asked, only half joking. "Can you think of some other things that aren't fair?" Delphi could have gone on for some time, but one thought fought its way to the front of the queue. "Socrates?" she said simply. Plato slumped and looked miserable. "I guess you're right," he said. "Are you—" Delphi tried to ask. "Yeah." They both sat silently for a minute, until Plato looked up into the mass of people standing around the market stalls. "Wait, that's him! That's the guy!" He pointed. "Who?" Delphi asked, standing up to see. "Miletus, the guy who accused Socrates of the crimes he got punished for." Plato sounded somewhere between furious and terrified. "That's him!" Delphi stared. But it was. She recognized him from the trial. He was a short man with long, straight hair. His face was curiously beaked, and along with the expensive dyed robe he was wearing, gave the impression of a particularly squat and ugly bird after losing half its feathers. "Don't stare at him, Delphi!" Plato hissed. She ignored him. Miletus was inspecting a pear with a face so sour it might have rotted in his hand. Why were all the apparently intelligent people in this city so old, or so ugly, or so male? "Do you think if we smashed him over the head with that jar over there, we could make it look like an accident?" she asked. "Delphi!" "What?" She turned to him. "We can't just let him walk away. It was his fault." "He's one of the most powerful people in the city." Plato looked panic-stricken. "He got Socrates thrown in jail. I know you want to get him out, but please." Delphi stopped when he saw how genuinely scared Plato looked. "All right, I won't smash a vase over his head. I was only joking." She watched him argue with the fruit seller for a few seconds. "I heard he thinks he's the best speaker in the city now, after what happened with Socrates," Plato muttered. "You should ask him what fair means." Delphi had a thought. It was one of those thoughts, the kind of thought that once you've had it, your brain just won't behave in the same way again. She wanted to be like Socrates? Right then. "Yeah, okay," she said, and stood up. "Delphi!" What could she say to Miletus about Socrates? She slowly walked over to Miletus, her eyes never leaving her intended target, while Plato hurriedly leapt up behind her. Miletus was just turning to leave when she reached him. "Excuse me, sir?" she asked, and Plato was astonished that Delphi had a way of speaking that was so polite. "I'm terribly sorry to disturb you, sir, especially someone as clever and as important as you are, sir, but might I be able to ask you a question?" The pink-nosed man turned in her direction and looked down to find a small girl with an adorable braid addressing him, looking both respectful and rather sweet. He smiled, his crooked teeth catching the sunlight. "Why, of course," he declared, passing his purchased fruit to his slave, who was waiting a few steps away. "Who might you be? You probably know you shouldn't be here, don't you?" Delphi shuffled her feet a little, not too much, just enough to show she was impressed to be talking to him. "My name is Delphi, sir," she said respectfully. "This is my brother, Plato." Plato bowed, hoping his face didn't look too red. "I know we shouldn't be in the Agora really, sir, but we were sent here by our father to find the answer to a question, sir. When we saw you, we thought we would find no one cleverer to help us, sir." Delphi wondered if she was overdoing it a bit, but Miletus seemed to be enjoying the attention. Of course, he agreed, looking pleased with himself. "Please, if I can assist your education, I would only be too pleased. What is your question?" Plato looked at Delphi curiously. What was she doing? "Please, if you're able to. We know if anyone in the city would know best, it must be you." Delphi licked her lips. "What does it mean if something is fair? Do you know the answer?" A look of annoyance flashed over Miletus' face. "Of course I know the answer. Our whole city is based around what is fair and what is not. It is really very simple." He cleared his throat. "Being fair is when you treat people the same as each other. Wouldn't you agree?" "Of course!" Delphi exclaimed, looking genuinely delighted. "With all your knowledge, I'm sure you're right." "Of course I'm right," Miletus agreed, smiling at her. "Now then, I must. So I'm sure we can test it and prove that you're right. All we need to do is think of something that is fair, and it will turn out it will be basically the same thing as treating people the same way." Delphi stood in front of him to stop him from leaving. Yes, you're right, of course," Miletus said, rooted to the spot. "Can you think of an example? Can you think of a situation where people are being treated the same? Is it fair?" "So if two men were sharing money and they both got the same amount, then that would be fair?" Delphi asked. "Yes, of course," Miletus replied. "And if a husband and wife were sharing a loaf of bread and they ate half of it each, then that would be fair?" "That sounds right, yes." "And in a school, if the teacher and the children take it in turns to decide what to do that day, that would be fair?" "Yes, wait, no, that, and we should have women race against men, because then the race is the same for everyone. So that's fair?" Miletus' mouth fell open, and he stared at Delphi. She had a look of wide-eyed and honest curiosity. He narrowed his eyes at her. "Certainly not," he muttered. "Such a thing does not happen, you know that." "And if there was a free man and a slave, then—" "Enough! These would not be fair at all, Miletus cried. Oh! And Delphi put on an expression of such bafflement, of such genuine confused interest, that Plato would later get her to show him how she did it. I thought you said that being fair is treating everyone the same. Is that right? Or perhaps that was a mistake after all? Miletus shuffled from one foot to another and glared at his slave, a young but tired-looking man, who seemed to be enjoying the show immensely. Yes, I must have misheard your question, Miletus agreed hurriedly. Of course, it is much more complicated than treating everybody the same. Far too complicated for little girls like— Oh, but I'm sure a teacher as wise and as experienced as you could teach me, Delphi asked, risking a little smile. Miletus hesitantly nodded. Do you know of a better answer? Miletus thought a little longer this time, occasionally glancing at his slave to make sure he wasn't smiling. Of course, what I meant before was that every person should be treated as they deserve to be treated, Miletus declared, looking more confident. That is what fair means. So a teacher and child would be treated differently because they deserve to be treated differently, but they would be treated the same as other children or other teachers. Does this definition of fair work? Delphi's face lit up. Oh, that is very clever. I don't think anyone else would have thought of an answer as clever as that. Yes, Miletus seemed to be thinking to himself. It is rather good, isn't it? I am very experienced, as you say. Delphi had to bite her lip to stop herself from laughing in his face. She noticed for the first time that a small crowd was gathering around them to watch and listen. People of Athens always appreciated a bit of street theatre. Plato was still standing behind her, looking nervous. She tried to wink at him while Miletus looked the other way. So it is fair that girls and boys are treated differently because they deserve to be? Delphi asked. The crowd was good, she thought. This was getting more and more fun. She could see why Socrates used to do it. Yes, of course, Miletus agreed, smiling to the people who were watching. I just have one more question, sir, if I may, Delphi asked. Yes, of course. I'm happy to explain it again, How do we know what people deserve? Delphi asked. Miletus stopped smiling. So how can we tell if one person deserves one thing and someone else deserves something different? Miletus turned his attention back to her. So how do we— What? Like, if Plato and me were sharing our dinner, then if we were going to be fair, we'd need to know how much we deserve, Delphi asked. She felt like her brain was on fire. Is this how Socrates felt? Oh, yes, obviously. Then how do we know how much we both deserve? He might get more because he's a boy and needs more energy for the gymnasium and stuff, but I might get more because I'm older than him. So wouldn't we have to decide how much we deserve in a fair way before we split it up? Yes, of course you would, but then— Delphi paused, mainly so the crowd knew she was going to say something important. Then— Oh, no! I don't think I understand at all. There's a really big problem. What, is there? Miletus was going pale. Surely there isn't a problem with what I said? From the look on Miletus' face, it looked like he was thinking about it. Several of the crowd were, too. It was getting bigger. There were even other children pushing to the front. When Delphi looked round, she saw that Plato had taken out a wax tablet and was taking notes. I think we've come back to where we started, Delphi said, with just a hint of desperation in her voice. We said that being fair is treating people how they deserve, but what they deserve is what is fair. So it doesn't tell us anything new, does it? I know I'm only a little girl, Delphi added, blinking her best puppy-dog eyes at him, but I'm worried I actually don't understand after all. Do you agree with Delphi? What did she mean? Miletus opened and closed his mouth a few times. His slave was openly grinning now, and Miletus started to say something, but stopped when he saw the expressions of the crowd. They were expecting him to say something intelligent in response. Well, yes, it sounds like you're right, he conceded, rubbing his chin. In a voice so cold it made Plato shiver, he added, Well done. Oh, no, I've not done anything, sir. All I've done is fail to understand your teaching. Surely, as you say, you must know what being fair means, and here I am still not understanding, even though you told me twice. Delphi almost cracked then, but the slither of a smile on her face disappeared in an instant. Miletus glanced at the crowd again. Some of them started calling out. Go on, the girl's trying hard. Explain it again. Yeah, have another go. I don't know what a fair is either, added a little boy who was picking his nose at the front of the crowd. Miletus did his best to ignore them. He focused instead on this little girl, who was now not seeming quite as sweet or stupid as she had appeared a few minutes ago. Well, it is very complicated, you see, little girl, because You must understand that... He started again. When I work for the city, It must be because you're very clever, Delphi declared, wanting to keep him talking. It's probably because you know so much more than me that I can't understand it. Oh, maybe that's what fair is. It's just knowing how to treat people. Relief shone through Miletus' face like a sunrise. Yes, I mean, of course, that is what fair is. That's what I said, he added loudly. So fair is knowing how to treat people? Delphi asked. Miletus thought hard this time. He really did. But sadly, he wasn't actually all that used to being questioned, especially by unusually determined little girls who go around being clever with friends who take notes at you. Yes, he answered slowly. That must be right, isn't it? Have we finally worked out what fair means? Yes, that sounds right, Delphi agreed. So you must be very clever because everybody needs to be treated differently, don't they? So you must have to find out what each person needs so you can treat them fairly. Yes, of course. That's exactly what I do. Obviously. He started to relax. Thank the gods that was over. He smiled at the crowd in a little girls what will they think of next kind of way and turned to leave. Except... Miletus almost choked. What now? He snapped. Delphi looked him in the eye. Except... I bet you have to do things which aren't what people need and still say that it's fair. Her voice was serious now, calm. Miletus was suddenly terrified of her. Like Socrates. You want him killed. Is that not fair, or are you going to say that's what he really needs? The crowd gasped. Even the little nose-picker stopped for a moment. Miletus was slowly turning purple. How? He stammered. I'm sorry, sir, she said, sarcasm dripping from every word. But obviously I still don't understand what fair means. How dare you? Miletus erupted suddenly, but the crowd weren't on his side. She's right, isn't she? Said one woman, carrying a large basket. That can't have been fair, can it? He doesn't even know what fair means, agreed another man. He looks like a bit of a dopey goat, if you ask me. By this time the slave was almost collapsing with laughter. You! Miletus roared, pointing a hooked finger straight at Delphi. You're just like that Socrates. Really? Delphi asked, smiling. It was a nice thing to hear. Yes, he used to go around the city asking questions, being charming at people. There was no attempt at charm in Miletus now. He was spitting venom. Going around making people look stupid with damn fool questions, biting and biting at you like some little fly. That's what you are, just a little fly. He shouted full in her face, and for a moment Delphi thought she might be in real trouble. He turned away, his face like a murderous crow, muttering to himself. I knew he had corrupted the young, but I had no idea his poison had reached the ears of little girls. He started to push his way through the crowd, and they reluctantly got out the way. The show appeared to be over. Delphi took a few deep breaths. She had been worried there for a moment, but that had felt good. Delphi, that was amazing! Plato cried. Was it? She asked, knowing that it sort of was. Yeah, the way you kept asking questions and not accepting what he said and thinking so fast. Look, I wrote it all down. He showed Delphi the wax tablet where he had scratched writing with a reed pen. In his excitement, he had forgotten that Delphi couldn't read a word. She had a look anyway. Why did you write it down? She asked. You never know, it might make a good book one day, he replied cheerfully. But I can't believe you outsmarted him. Everyone saw it, and you knew what fair meant all along. Delphi sighed. Plato hadn't really understood. I don't know what fair means, she said, shaking her head. I just wanted to show him that he didn't either. Plato scratched his ear with his pen. So, do you think anybody really knows? He asked. Delphi shrugged. I doubt it. Maybe Socrates does. And the thought that had been sneaking up on her for weeks finally grabbed hold of her. Wait, that's it! That's what Socrates meant. What? Socrates said the only thing he knew was that he didn't know anything. This is what he meant. He meant that everybody thinks they know what things like fairness mean, but they actually don't. They just think they do, and they don't think about it properly and get it wrong. She grabbed Plato by the arm. Only Socrates was clever enough to realize how stupid we all are. Do you think Socrates is right? Do we not really know what ideas like fairness actually mean?